Wednesday, so you know what that means. A wrestling chat with friends. Sound effects.
Meow, meow, meow.
Very nice. Megan will be proud. I am your host, Cheats. I am joined by always, but EJ the Collector. Elliot, how you feeling?
I'm here. I am present. I am accounted for. And as always, I am accountable. Collector's Choice this week. Some great autographs came in from ProWrestlingTees.com. Since this is an AEW heavy show, I'll show off Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida.
Very nice. I saw this one and I was like, is it really? It's Chris Statlander's derriere, if you will.
It really is. She's currently on the shelf and hopefully coming back soon. And Shida always on time. Pro Wrestling Tees, thank you very much for the autographs. Cheats, good to be here. Big show last night. Let's get into it.
Big show last night. Let's get into it. As always, this show and all of our WCWF shows are brought to you by the Family Podcast Network. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you share it, retweet it, give us a rate. We'd really appreciate it. Oh, man, where do we start? I will start. I'm going to start in an odd place because Cameron and I have been playing this game probably for the last week and a half, and it is a very, very fun game for us. It's actually more fun for me than it is him, but it's a neat thing. I'm sure you've seen it online. It's basically guess the wrestler. So I'll give you 7 questions, and you can ask pretty much general stuff to narrow down who the wrestler is. But once you get the wrestler, you have to make the guess. You get up to 7 questions to ask. Elliot, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I have a wrestler in mind. I wish I could tell the audience so they know, but I will not. You have 7 questions.
Okay. Active wrestler or former wrestler?
Good question. Active wrestler, but days have long passed. Mostly a valet these days, but technically active wrestler.
Okay. AEW?
AEW. 2.
Okay, that's 2. Active wrestler. AEW. Former world champion? In any promotion?
Yes.
Okay.
3.
Part-timer, former world champion in AEW. Okay. Currently involved in a current top tier storyline.
Top tier? Not sure. Yes, involved in a storyline.
Okay.
I will actually revise that answer to say yes. That is number 4.
Okay.
You have 3 more questions, and we're playing Guess the Wrestler.
World champion. Billy Gunn.
Great answer. Incorrect.
It's number 5. Okay.
Yes. 2 more qualifying questions.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of who was like.
And the interesting part, based off of your clues, there are several wrestlers in AEW that does fit this mold.
Absolutely.
It's not a gimme as I thought it would
be. I'll say like currently valeting a stable or an individual wrestler.
I'm trying to see if this question qualifies, but I will grant it. Single wrestler. That was number 6.
Yep, I got one more.
You got one more.
So I got a former world champion who's still technically active, but really more of a valet. A world champion in their own right. Oh man, I probably should have. There's like a whole gender.
One more.
There's a whole gender thing I haven't even qualified yet, but let's see.
You have not. You have not qualified a gender question.
All right, but I'm still just kind of going through who they're valeting. Okay. So a former world champion. I know who one person it's not. Oh boy.
Right off the top, you have one more question left.
I know.
I will say this. Right off the top, if we're looking at this in AEW, there are 2 glaring people with the same, based off of your questions right now, there are 2 with a glaring resume. You have a 50-50 shot. Right now, the answer is yes to all of the questions for at least 2 people. Could be 3.
Who am I? What if I have there's like a gap in my AEW roster right now. Do I have one of their figures? That wasn't a question. I'm sort of asking myself that.
That should be a question. The answer is I don't know because I don't know all of your figures.
Right. Okay. Were they featured last night on Dynamite?
Great question. This is a stipulation. There is a stipulation. So I will say no.
Okay.
But you did not ask the question was the individual on the show last night? Being that was your 7th question, I will say the individual was on the show last night, was not featured.
Go Matt Hardy.
Incorrect.
Okay. Who's the glaring person I missed? Should have gotten.
There's 2 that I think, based off your questions, would have the exact same resume. But the one that it is not, Jeff Jarrett.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Jeff Jarrett
he's been pretty active though lately, I'd say.
That's what I said. I said active.
Yeah, I know. He's technically active. Yeah, he'd be there. Sanjay Dutt was not a world champion.
No. I'm trying to think if I threw you off on.
Paige is more. Oh, Saraya is more active than she is a valet.
Yes.
It's not Vicky Guerrero because she was never a world champion.
How are you missing the glaring obvious one?
I know, right?
And I'm trying to think. Maybe did I screw you up somehow?
Give me a hint that's not a dead giveaway, but will definitely get me closer to the answer.
I will say if I'm going to revive an answer based on what you said, I will say that it is not just an
Sting.
It's Sting.
It's Sting.
It was Sting.
That's what
I didn't know when you said, is it a major storyline? Darby Allin is a major storyline. I'm not sure if Sting is I don't know if Sting's role in this is as major.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I was trying to eliminate with that question, but Sting.
It's Sting.
Fits all those. All right, so I got it in 8 questions and 1 hint. All right, not bad.
Not bad.
Next week I'll have somebody for you.
I love it. I appreciate it. Now let's jump right into the big news of the AEW world, and it's 2 weeks in a row for us now, and it does follow the untimely passing of Jay Briscoe. We had not heard from Mark Briscoe, I do not believe, until last night. It was announced a couple days before Briscoe would be taking on Jay Lethal on TBS on AEW Dynamite, which in itself, based off of all the things we talked about last week, was a big deal.
Yeah.
They actually, I guess when Tony got the approval, Tony really got the approval. So they ran an extended tribute to Jay Briscoe earlier segment of the program last night. Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal's fighting back tears during walking out, shaking the hand, wearing an armband. They put on a banger of a match, one that makes me think, man, I really was missing out on this Briscoe thing for quite some time.
Yeah.
And, at the end of it, thank you, Tony chants. There's tears. All of the wrestlers do come out on the top of the Charon. They give Jay his moment alone. Give Mark, his moment alone in the ring. There was so much to take in. It was very emotional. It wasn't the exact same thing, and rightfully so. We talked about this last week. It wasn't the exact same thing they did for Brody Lee, but it was very, very Briscoe heavy tribute. What did you make of it? Were you happy about it? Like, how did you receive this?
I was overall very pleased. Like you, I'm not very steeped in a lot of Briscoe history, very aware of them. I've caught a lot of their Ring of Honor matches. They're definitely sort of like a backyard wrestling duo that sort of made it to the big time. 2 things sort of jumped out for me. One, that tribute package to begin the show was definitely kind of hit me in the feels. That was a very well put together tribute. And another, and I touched on this, I guess, last week too, clearly beloved person across the wrestling industry. In the last week, we've had tributes, not just from all the AEW and Ring of Honor talent, a fair amount of WWE talent who have worked with him in previous organizations have all reached out. Last night on Twitter, everyone from the likes of Bayley to Seth Rollins were tweeting about it, all with the same sort of chills, tears, that sort of expression of emotion. For someone who was for two people who were barely mentioned, not even featured on AEW since its inception, a very warm reaction by the wrestling community to him. So kudos. Had Warner Brothers Discovery stuck to their guns and didn't want to feature much Briscoe content, especially a tribute match or having Mark come on, I would have understood that position if they had stuck with it. I also think that they could have, and they did. They could have absolutely said, "Look, we're seeing the outpouring of support for him on social media. Let's do something for him." Good thing was they changed their mind. Better thing was Mark Briscoe was ready to go, honoring his brother by wanting to get out there and have a match. Jay Lethal was the perfect person to do it. They both fought for having this match with Tony, apparently. So the way it all kind of came together at the end, I think it was quite touching, quite appropriate, a great match. I love the reception afterwards. The only thing that would have sort of put the cap on it, and I didn't expect this, and it didn't happen, was the Mark Briscoe was all elite graphic that they could have shown at the end, or Tony could have tweeted it, right when they went off the air, like they do with most wrestlers who they assign the picture of him. Mark Briscoe is now all elite. That sort of feature. They didn't do that. I'm not entirely surprised they didn't do that, but that could have been one more thing that would have.
I don't know. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, only because the night was about Jay. Mark and Jay Lethal did a tribute match in honor of Jay.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing it after the match or doing it like that, I feel like might have taken a little bit away from honoring Jay. Because then it would have been Jay, but then there's a little bit of Mark in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they ended it with the graphic that they ended it of Jay and Mark underneath this big Teletron of Jay, right?
For
and
sure.
I was just like, that was the visual, that was the money shot, that was the beauty there. The interesting thing I wondered, and I was wondering how they would do this. Everybody conventional wisdom says Lethal puts over Mark. I was just wondering a little bit in my mind, does actually they wrestle this banger of a match, Lethal gets the win, and then Mark's in the ring afterwards. All the same stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
But do you let Lethal get the win? Because he, at the time, nobody thought he was AEW talent,
Right. I think that's coming from a super Jay Lethal Mark. I think there was no chance they were going to let no chance that was going to happen.
I agree with you, but the Kushidas of the world show up and they get, they lose.
Right.
Like any of the debuts, that was the whole thing about AEW. They debut all these great folks and they wind up losing at least their first match to AEW talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want that to happen. I was just like, how do you play this? Like, who actually comes out? Because at the end, you're still going to get the same moment. I do think, as well, as you talk about the outpouring of support for the Briscoes and their families and so forth, I thought it was a really nice touch that the shirts, 100% of the proceeds of the shirts will go to the family to take care of, expenses and so forth. I thought that was a really nice touch. We talk about this, and I am a Jay Lethal Mark. The amount of trust that people put into Jay Lethal in regards to Ric Flair's last match, or people that you want to work with, or even in this scenario, he wanted to work. I'm sure Briscoe, if they were going to do it, could have really had a pick of anyone in the company per se. But it seems like Jay Lethal is just like that dude these days. He's the go-to guy that people want to really work with. And I was like, that's just got to be a credit to, Jay Lethal was visibly crying in the ring before the match, after the match. I don't know all the Ring of Honor history, but obviously I know Sanjay Dutt is a big ROH guy too,
Yep.
visibly crying. Did you see? There was a little glimmer of that shot of like Sanjay and Jay like hugging Jay when he walked up the ramp,
Yep.
face full of tears. You know, that's just I thought it was a really nice moment, but I also was impressed as like Jay Lethal is that dude.
Jay Lethal is that dude, and obviously Jay Briscoe was that dude too. And the breadth of his career has touched wrestlers from every promotion, and it's shown since his passing. And it's really it's sort of solidified their legacy some. Now the question will go, where does Mark go from here? Well, I don't want that question does not need to be answered anytime soon. Mark will figure out, he's take care of his family, but I think Mark will forever have a home, in AEW, Ring of Honor, wherever that becomes. I think he would have had it anyway, but whether this helps Mark Briscoe, whether this helps Ring of Honor going forward, if it plans Ring of Honor sort of get accelerated because of this, who knows all that. We're all sort of sitting around waiting to see what Ring of Honor becomes. But now I sort of feel like whatever Ring of Honor becomes, I definitely want Mark Briscoe to be a part of it now to carry on his brother's legacy. I think that I can't take credit for this because I saw it somewhere on Twitter, but I'd say you retire those belts. You let the Pugh family keep those belts, and you redesign something else for a tag team title later on down the road. You need to honor Jay's memory. Lots of ways going forward, and I'm now even more excited to see Ring of Honor sort of get started based on this. That sort of this last night kind of re-energized my desire to see Ring of Honor get off the ground even more so.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I'm 100% there yet. I want them to take their time with Ring of Honor and make sure that it's done well. I will tell you this. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know Mark Briscoe personality-wise from anyone else. But if they had taken quote unquote the Beastie Boy route and like never performed live, if he says I'm never wrestling again, after last night, I hate to say it, I'm okay with it. I get it. I understand. The man's been wrestling with his brother his entire life. And
if he makes that decision, I'm totally fine with it.
It's like totally like, well, I just I'm a huge Beastie Boy fan, and I don't know if you know this, but the Beastie Boys never performed another concert after after MCA passed. It was like that. That's not the Beastie Boys anymore. Like, we'll do that. Yep. And I was like, you know what? I get it. You know what I mean? I just get it because they were
Beastie Boys. Beastie Boys were a group of three. It was those three, right?
Yeah. And it's just like, but no, I thought it was a really nice touch. I think Tony Khan now is starting to, getting a reputation for doing this part of that the right way. Little bit surprised that it didn't happen last week, but it was so fast that I actually think it was better that they took a week, better that they did it this way. And so kudos to them for that.
And I will say this, the tribute show that they filmed after Dynamite last week is now making the rounds on YouTube. I recommend people go out and find that if they want to and watch. Eddie Kingston had a great match against QT Marshall. There were some other just really high. It's about an hour long. So if you want to see more tribute to Jay Briscoe, you can find it now. There is a tribute show that was filmed after Dynamite last week that is now making the rounds online.
Let's just jump into the big parts of the show. We're not going to keep the public here long tonight, but let's talk about the top of the AEW ticket, if you will, and that goes to the AEW champion MJF. He is now in a very heated feud with Bryan Danielson. Danielson last night wrestled Brian Cage. Every time he comes out, I'm becoming more and more of a Brian Cage fan. The end of the match, the bounty is for Cage to hurt Danielson per MJF's orders. Afterwards there's extracurricular activity, but the big thing is Max is on video. Max is out there now. Max is really in this feud with Bryan Danielson. What do you make of what's happening at the very, very top echelon of AEW right now?
the story's being told very well, gearing to this 60-man Iron Man match that's going to happen next month. I am really looking forward to that. I think, we all know that Bryan Danielson can, if you give him an hour, he'll give you 60 minutes. Um, MJF doesn't wrestle all that much. So seeing him go for 60 minutes is going to be exciting, I think. I think they will put on what they've done leading up to this has been superb. I think there's still some big spots that will happen before that. I think, his challenge next week, as was revealed, Danielson's going to have to face Timothy Thatcher, who is kind of in Japan.
Very surprising call. I didn't even know he'd gotten released from NXT. So there was clearly no non-compete type thing.
No,
from his
I think he
official
went.
release.
He went
He
right
went right
to.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know much of him from NXT, but
I did. I saw him a lot in NXT.
He's gotten this reputation for being sort of a beast. So this is another ringer that they're going to bring in, probably on a one-shot deal. But I think Danielson will muster the strength to go over somehow. But I think that there'll be some spot that will leave Danielson quite compromised going into the Iron Man match. MJF's the kind of guy who's going to exploit every possible way to injure him beforehand. I don't think it'll be another bounty, but it'll be some gang attack, maybe the night of the pay-per-view, who knows. But I do want MJF to have a long reign as champion. This is almost building up to seem as though Danielson's going to dethrone him. I'm not saying it can't happen. I think it would be premature, but MJF is playing the top heel character so well. You knew he would. His reign, I think, has been excellent so far. The debut of the new style of the belt, the way he has been cutting his promos. He is, I've said this for weeks and weeks, best heel in the last quarter century, and it's making me very excited for that match.
I'm excited about the match as well. You're right. I do think they're building up Danielson to go through this whole gauntlet, and it's almost weird if they build it up so much and then there's not a payoff. So I'm kind of interested to see how they could do this. I'm also interested to see the dynamic of Danielson wrestling every week on these challenges and MJF just sitting there.
Yep.
I am always pleasantly surprised when MJF does wrestle because you forget how in the ring he's actually really, really good. You forget that when you don't see him wrestle as much. But I'll be interested to see. Do they do anything weird with Takeshita? I know they're kind of really giving him some babyface push in this kind of feud as a third person.
Oh, I think an MJF Takeshita title match is something we're going to see
before the Danielson match, or
afterwards, okay. which leads me to believe. But I can see Takeshita being a member of Blackpool Combat Club if they still are doing that. Claudio hasn't been around very much on TV the last few weeks. Wheeler Yuta is sort of around. Moxley Blackpool Combat Club may not even be a thing anymore since Regal has left. I don't know. They don't come out together, but having Takeshita, I don't think they're going to turn him heel, but seeing him as the next sort of, I think Tony has an idea for him to be a top star. He's learning the language. He's living in America now full time. He's a lot bigger than I thought he was.
He's huge. He is huge.
Yeah, when he came into the ring, to save Daniel, I got an appreciation for how big he actually is. I know how well he can go in the ring. Takeshita is someone who I think could work a main event program with MJF after Danielson and have some exciting matches with him. I'm a big Takeshita fan.
I'm not as high as you are, but I do think that they're building him in the right way to be a player. I don't know if he's going to be a major star. I think they're building him to be a player, right? Contrary, just when you said it, it made me think. Even last night, I think they're ruining Yuta. I think they had something, and whatever they had with Wheeler Yuta, they lost it.
Yeah,
I am afraid even though he's in a little bit better position than Yuta, but they are ruining Yuta, and Daniel Garcia might not be too far behind.
Well, I can remember several weeks ago we were saying they may be featuring those two a little more than they needed to be.
Right.
Those two might not be quite ready for prime time. I think Garcia slightly more than Yuta is showing his. No, actually, I think Garcia is a little behind Yuta as far as camera presence, promos. Obviously, Yuta's not great either.
Yuta's brutal,
but Garcia doesn't have that it factor yet. Neither one of them particularly impressed me. I think Takeshita could surpass both of them with speaking less English than them. He's just a little more dynamic, a little more energetic in his promos. Yuta, I can see glimpses of it in Yuta, although, yeah, I think Yuta and Garcia have been exposed a little bit, and I think
I think Garcia is in a better stable. They look Jericho and those guys. He's just in a better situation. I think Yuta they let him talk way too much, and it's just like it's rough. It's rough for me. I will be interested though, because here's two things I think about when I think of this. Is now they're giving this big push to Action Andretti.
Andretti.
I don't know if that guy's ready either.
He was just featured on the sessions with Renee Paquette. He's getting he made his debut less than 3 years ago.
I was like, what? This is weird.
I don't see anything. I have yet to see anything in him yet that doesn't feel like another Daniel Garcia or.
That's where I am. It's Yuta, Garcia. It's Dante Martin. Now and again, you got to have these people come up, but it's like, geez, man, I just don't. I'm not sure if any of those guys are just fully. And it just sets them up to be treated like a Roosh or treated like somebody that is really talented, but just doesn't fit in anywhere right now.
Right. They have all the skills, but there is just something that's missing with each of those guys yet, and it'll come over time. And they're all in good positions with the company where they're going to get the opportunity to have that time. If you think about, there's some guys, if those four were in, say, WWE, they would never get an opportunity. I think they'll have these opportunities in AEW.
Yep.
Some of it's what they make of them themselves, and they're all trying.
Is it fair to say that those guys are like NXT stars, but like there's no AEW equivalent to the NXT?
That's a great analogy. And you think about that, like Carmelo Hayes could out-talk all four of them put together. He would humble all four of them. And, imagine what Carmelo could do in NXT. I mean,
in AEW.
In AEW.
Not even close.
No. So, not even close. Yes, there is sort of an NXT. There is a developmental system in AEW, but like literally it's like it's the 8:45 segment, the 9:15 segment of AEW. Dark and Elevation are featuring even greener talent than those guys.
Yeah, I guess the question is, you bring up when you brought up Carmelo Hayes, like it's interesting now to even think about, like, look at like a Grayson Waller, Carmelo Hayes, some of these Cameron Grimes, some of these bigger NXT guys. You put them in AEW, they're, I think, far ahead in regards to charisma. Maybe not ring experience, because Garcia's got a ton of good ring experience. So does Yuta. But who's a bigger star? Grayson Waller, Carmelo Hayes, or Wheeler Yuta and Daniel Garcia?
Well, it's obvious that Carmelo Hayes is. And I mean, honestly, what it shows is the Performance Center is a training ground that is training these guys in every aspect. The training that goes on in AEW is all the work these guys get in the indie shows.
Because it's like, on the other side of that too, we, even without a Mandy Rose, Toxic Attraction, if you bought, Gigi and JC over to AEW, it's just that's an interesting, we never really delve into that, and we should on a future show, because that seems like a really interesting kind of exercise, right? Like who would be
It
who would fit on both sides.
shows the importance of coaches, a regular
Sure.
coaching regimen, performance center. And it's also revealed, and I wanted to bring this up too. It's also revealed in the way they're teaching them to wrestle too, because there are a lot of montages you can see on social media of some of the injuries and the botches that are happening in AEW.
It's been that way since the beginning of
AEW. And it reflects
AEWbotch.com.
It reflects the, it's just getting practice gym time. AEW doesn't have.
But here's the thing. In all fairness, some of the biggest botches in AEW come from some of the most experienced people. Like if you're looking at Tony Storm, or if you're looking at Ty Conti, these are people that have been through all of that. And there's some of the most brutal exercises and botches we've seen in a long. It would be one thing if it was all like Jade Cargill matches, but it's not.
Can we talk about for a second about Ruby Soho and how short?
Please. I knew you were going to talk about this.
I do want to talk about this. I'm afraid for Ruby Soho's health in AEW.
I get it.
She has had her neck, twisted in a bad spot. I forget who that was against. She had her face blasted apart by Tay Guevara.
Yeah.
And she comes back last night. Tony Storm gave her a shot in the corner. The way her head snapped back too made me just cringe. I don't know if what it could be. Ruby could have sold that.
She could have sold it. I was looking several times and she could have like done the Ali rope-a-dope, right? Like she moves more, and then the force of just Tony Storm does that. But I'm sitting there like, geez.
I am extremely worried about Ruby Soho's future. And it concerns me. Tony Storm needs to work on that. Ruby needs to get herself in a position. I hope someone's taking notice backstage and is working with them when the cameras are off.
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. This is not new. Historically, the AEW women's division, through all of those botch accounts, is brutal. You can't name a woman in that division that hasn't had like really bad botches. And I'm talking Brett Baker. I'm talking, just leading up. I mean, maybe it might be weird to say, but Nyla Rose might be the safest wrestler in the division. Because I've seen, you name it, Anna Jay, you name the matches that Red Velvet. There's a whole like movie dedicated to Red Velvet botches.
Yeah.
So
it's tough.
It's one thing if it was like, oh, Jade's not ready. These aren't all Jade. Thunder Rosa had a bunch of stiff work, So I don't know what to do about it. Maybe that's why they bought in Madison Rayne and all these folks, but there's some brutal stuff that happens in the women's division over at AEW.
And I hope people like Madison Rayne and Serena Deeb, she's still around there, I hope someone's taking notice, whether it's QT Marshall or Serena, and saying we got to get these guys some ring time, some practice time to avoid this. Accidents happen all the time, but it's becoming a little bit of an endemic of bad spots, injuries. Yep. And it shook me last night when I saw how hard Ruby's head snapped back, and considering all the injuries she's had just at AEW, I'm worried about my girl. I like her a lot.
Yep. I like her a lot.
Well, I pre-ordered her figure that got advertised on Ringside Collectibles, and I want to see her have a long career. She's got to work on that. That was tough to look at. Get with it, Tony.
Tough to look at. Let's just kind of finish up on the big AEW storylines. It looks like they're setting up the Guns versus the Acclaim. We don't have to spend long on it, but what do you think?
I'm concerned that the Guns are going to get a title run.
And Billy flips.
And Billy's going to flip.
Yep.
I think the Acclaimed is established enough.
Yeah.
Gotten over that they're gonna lose a little bit of a rub probably. They'll get shuffled around a little bit, but with Max's rap, that's a hook that will keep them relevant. It'll extend a feud with the Guns. I'm not a fan of the Guns. I'm a fan of Billy Gunn now. Somehow I've become a fan of Billy Gunn. I really like the Acclaim, but yeah, I think that the titles are going to change hands sooner than later.
Yep.
Billy will turn on the Acclaimed. It'll last a while, and then the Acclaim will move on to somewhere else. And I hope they keep keep a top spot because those two deserve it.
I agree with everything you said. Like, there's nothing I would say that's any different than that. That's 100% perfect. I have long expressed my challenges is the nice word of saying this with Darby Allin. There was a part of me that said, I just hope Buddy Matthews beats him and gets the belt because I like that story much better. I like that stable much better, and I think Buddy Matthews deserves more.
House of Black deserves more, all around.
I do. I love House of Black. I think House of Black deserves more. I think Buddy Matthews in particular deserves more. I think they should be running a roughshod over the entire AEW in a very scary and awesome way. They are not. And Darby Allin beats Buddy Matthews clean in the ring, and I don't know what to go from here because there's nothing that Darby Allin can do that I believe at this point.
He's like a top 3 fan favorite in AEW.
He is. He absolutely is. He's huge. I have resigned myself to the fact that I don't get it. I understand why people like him. It's just not necessarily my cup of tea. And it's not a knock. He's a tremendous worker, tremendous wrestler. He takes bumps. It's like Spike Dudley and him. Those are the two people that take those types of level of bumps. He can go for hours on end. I get it. And I just don't believe in my lifetime that a Darby Allin, with the moves he does and the frame he has, beats Wardlow, beats Samoa Joe, beats Buddy Matt. I just don't believe it. And I also think he has the lamest finishing move in all of wrestling. The coffin drop.
I like the coffin drop.
It does nothing for me. And if you think that a coffin drop can knock out Samoa Joe, you're insane.
Right.
And they're just it just doesn't do it for me.
Wardlow should catch him mid coffin drop and just break him in half.
Just destroy him.
Right.
Like the one of the happiest moments of my life was when Brody King was holding him over the apron and was just like,
in that battle royal,
that made sense. But we're gonna get. Looks like we're gonna get a Joe Darby. Was this a third match? Whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see Joe take the title back because I do want to see Wardlow back in the picture. And I think that's how you get Wardlow back in the picture to run it back with Joe. Wardlow's been off TV a little too long. They need to I'd like to have him back. He got his hair cut and then didn't show up again. So he needs to return. He needs to get his revenge on Joe. And I think he does that when Joe has the title again, hopefully.
What are we doing with all of this Hangman Adam Page, John Moxley in Ohio match?
Yeah, I don't really know. I thought Moxley Page 3 would have taken place at the pay-per-view. Feels like the right place to do it. I don't know. I think Page and maybe even Moxley are a little sort of just out in the wind right now. Like this, sure. I love the two of them. It's two of Moxley's one of my favorite wrestlers. I appreciate Hangman Page. He's a great worker.
He really is good.
Those two put on great matches. I guess Moxley was him not being medically cleared last night. Was that just a storyline injury?
So. Storyline.
I'm sure he's just fine.
Yeah.
They'll be in Ohio, so I can't predict a winner because I could see a path for both of them to win. They need to face each other the third time and then move to something. They each need to move to something else substantial. I don't know what title or when Page gets involved in next. I honestly think they ought to stick Page back into a storyline with maybe a returning Adam Cole that has history. If you're going to involve Omega and the Bucks at some point, you can bring the whole idea of the Bullet Club back. But I don't know. They're both sort of in weird spots. Moxley doesn't need to be in a title picture, but Moxley needs to be in grueling storylines, I think, to make him you want to see him in top storylines all the time. And again, we kind of always run into this with their stacked roster. You got to have time to feature all of them. It's good that you give them some time to rest, but as you can see with people like Wardlow and Roosh, and we talked about Miro for months now.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening there.
It's easy to have these guys drop off the planet for months at a time and forget about them. That's not going to happen with Moxley. But those two could put on a main event caliber match whenever they want. And the fact that we're getting them on Dynamite sort of 3 times, I love it. I don't know. I don't want to even make a call. I want to sit back and watch it. Makes me think Moxley will go over, but I don't know what that would. I don't know what a loss for Page would do unless you're going to really change his character up.
Yeah, I don't know. You brought up a good point. And the question is, what do you do with a returning Adam Cole? Is that a good move for a Hangman Page? Is that a good move for a Jon Moxley? What feud do you stick him in? I'll tell you what I'm not looking forward to as much, even though it might be a fine match, is now Yuta is going to take on Page at Rampage tomorrow night. And then we've also got the returning of episode and returning in-ring apparently for Powerhouse Hobbs. So the Book of Hobbs comes back. And then you have a Jamie Hayter match advertised on Rampage. So there'll probably be more stuff, but that's what we're getting so far on Rampage, with other things I'm sure will be coming out soon. Guess the question I have as we go into basically a huge wrestling weekend that actually is less about AEW and more about what we talked about on Tuesday. For all of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, go back, watch the Tuesday show, listen to the Tuesday show. It was all about what's going to happen with Royal Rumble. Cam and I have been watching old Royal Rumbles on Peacock, so we're excited about that. Where do you see? Do we like the pace overall? And this will be the last thing, and we'll get out of here. But do we like the overall pace of what AEW is doing, like storyline wise, trajectory wise?
For my current level of fandom and interest, which is at a high level, higher than it's been in a long time, I'm okay with AEW. I have not trying to compare the two companies to each other. I appreciate the wrestling aspect. AEW feels to me more like WCW and NWA. The changes they made to they relaunched their
visuals,
like
the stage, yep.
It's fairly subtle. It's not really it wasn't really a huge difference. I like them not trying to be any more big time than they are. I like they shouldn't be trying to really compete with WWE. I will say this: I like that they did crack 1 million viewers yesterday.
Now the question is, did they do that? Because here's the thing I also was surprised about. They closed the show with the Briscoe match. I actually thought they were going to open the episode with the Briscoe match. So I was on from 8 p.m. Thinking the first thing you were going to see was Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal. And the reason I thought that was, you do that, you get the tribute out of the way, you get the match out of the way, then you go ahead and advance your storylines, because this isn't coming down. If Mark Briscoe is going to be a active All Elite wrestler, then you know what I mean, it could be a different scenario. But that's what I thought. I thought people might have tuned in at the beginning to see that.
Yes, I think cracking the 1 million did have a Briscoe bump. Yeah. Definitely. So even without that, you probably were still north of 900,000. I don't know how much.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't think Briscoe brings in an extra 300,000 viewers.
I'll tell you what it did. It made me watch live.
Yeah.
Usually on Dynamite, I'm probably not watching live. I'm probably putting the kid to bed, probably doing some other things. But it made me watch live. I will say though, and this probably is just because of the season we're in, which is a season that the pay-per-view is maybe a month away, month and a half away. You've got to build storyline. I do feel like it's a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Dynamites aren't banger after banger. You know what I mean? The Rampages definitely aren't banger after banger. They've really relegated those Battle of the Belts. Those are just almost throwaway shows, in my opinion, now.
Yep.
So I do hope as we start to get our footing, get this big weekend past us, which is a huge football weekend, huge pay-per-view for WWE. Like, you come back maybe with that Ohio, start really starting to be like, okay, let's ramp this up. Some of the folks that you mentioned that we haven't seen in a while, even in action. Let me get Roosh back in action. Let me get, some folks returning that may have been out for a while that should have some good stories. You know what I mean? Like, let's get some real good footing there. Get Adam Cole back in the system. And I think you have that chance to really build some exciting stuff.
You also need to feature Jade Cargill every week.
Yeah, I don't know what. See, okay, so the Cargill thing, and again, we'll close out on some of this stuff, but the Cargill thing used to feel like it was a Rampage thing. Jade wrestles on Rampage. Jade wrestles on Rampage just about every week. She keeps the streak going. She keeps it. I don't know if it's not like a major injury, but like maybe just wear and tear type injuries that's kind of not getting her featured as much. I don't know if it's the Bow Wow storyline fell apart, which I thought was stupid to begin with, but I need more Jade. I need, like, we talk about this every week. AEW has an embarrassment of riches with talent that they could be featuring, I think, really talented people every week, probably too much, and they just kind of haven't figured out some of that stuff. And it goes to the point, and I'll close with this, and we'll tend to talk about it in the future. You said that you feel currently right now, and AEW feels like WCW.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like kind of the second big promotion, and it is the second biggest promotion, probably by far. It might be bigger than WCW now. To me, it feels like 50% between WCW, and that 50% is when they're featuring the Moxleys, Danielsons, Jerichos. That feels like WCW. The rest of the show feels like a glorified indie show. So it's somewhere between WCW and like a big time indie show.
And if you're a wrestling fan, that's not a terrible niche. If you're a sports entertainment fan, you're probably starting to maybe,
I'm a huge wrestling fan. I'm a bigger WCW NWA Territories fan than I ever was a WWE fan. But to me, it's starting to feel, and I don't know if this is, the Triple H effect. I don't know if this is, what we've been doing, but it just, everything in the WWE right now, and it could just be the time of year, just feels so big.
Yeah.
It could be the fact that they've got the best storyline with the Bloodline going, but it just feels so big, and it feels like we have to watch every week to see what Sammy's going to do and Roman's going to do, and you know what I mean. And there's a little bit of, it's a little bit like maybe AEW is at one point I felt like they were both must-watch TV. I wasn't going to get through the week without seeing either show. Now it's like, I'll watch Dynamite. I can take or leave Rampage. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta watch the big stuff.
And we'll talk about it in upcoming weeks about some of those reasons. But they do involve, I think they do involve not having CM Punk there. I think it does involve not having MJF sort of getting either opening the show or closing the show every week. There's
less moments of me texting you or calling someone and saying, "Hey, did you see what happened last week?"
Yep.
You know what I mean? Did you see what happened yesterday? I mean, they got a little bit of that today, I guess, with just the match that Mark Briscoe and Jay put together was just so good. That's like, hey, if you haven't watched that, you should watch it. You know what I mean? But I feel like those moments right now are all that momentum's in the WWE. Like,
it'll be like that through April, through WrestleMania.
Okay.
And then it's going to be summertime, and they'll start thinking about another Forbidden Door, and more talent will get healthy and come back. Statlander will come back, and Cargill will drop the TNT title and go after the world title, and things will start really, hopefully, going from there, and we'll see.
And there's also another element to this. It's like there probably have been like there's probably been less acquisitions, right? So think
Yeah.
about it. Some of the
Yeah.
hottest time that we had in AEW was just seeing who Tony was going to buy up next,
Right.
who Tony was going to debut next.
Right.
And it seems as if that has stabilized a bit, right? That has stabilized a bit. And it is not, not as much like, oh, I got to watch to see Bryan Danielson show up, to see Adam Cole show up, to see Malachi Black show up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less of that. And now you're talking about like, all right, what's the best storyline? And, MJF is a great storyline, but I don't know if it's the top. Is it the top 8? What's the top AEW storyline?
Oh, MJF and Bryan Danielson.
Okay, that's the top. That's 1A. That's what leads everything.
Yeah. Ask me what the second one is. I don't know. All
right, my man. We've got to get out of here. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your obviously insight. Is there anything you're looking forward to? All genres. We don't discriminate here, even though it's a Thursday show. What are you looking for the most as you go into next week?
Here's what I'm looking forward to. In the next week or 2 weeks, we're going to have our favorite heel and heels. Megan is going to be joining us on a Thursday show coming up.
Excellent. That'll be fantastic.
She specifically told me this past weekend, have me on in the next upcoming weeks. So I'm looking forward to having our favorite heel and heels join us. We know she's watching. Megan, we miss you. We love you. Jared wants to come on too and talk about Vince. We're going to have her husband Jared on the Tuesday show coming up here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Royal Rumble on Saturday. I'm looking forward to buying my tickets to New Japan in April for DC. Yep. We're gonna do that and hopefully do maybe a live podcast from there too. That's gonna be awesome. How about you? You're gonna watch Royal Rumble Saturday live with Can Jam, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. We've been watching a lot of old Royal Rumbles. I'm always looking forward to things like that. That like Cam literally will watch. Maybe the men's Royal Rumble match halfway through before he leaves. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the idea that it'll be on in the background and he can walk in and so forth, I think that'll be obviously it's always a cool moment in our household when we can talk about wrestling. He loves wrestling figures. He wrestles with them all the time. And so that I will look forward to. I'll look forward to the surprises. Everybody looks forward to the surprise entries and shenanigans of the weekend. I don't think I wasn't on the Tuesday show to make a prediction.
Yeah, let's hear it. You got a surprise and a winner.
Oh, Cody wins. And man, surprise entry. I really don't know who would be like a surprise.
Have you seen if TG is watching the show tonight, TG, log off because we're about to do a spoiler here. Have you seen the rumors in the last couple of days that have jumped up about Stone Cold joining the Royal Rumble? Because the Rock seemingly is not going to happen. So there've been all these rumors that like Stone Cold's going to be challenging Roman. That's a terrible idea.
That's stupid. That's dumb. I think Cody wins, and I would love to see. I really don't know about a surprise that would get me kind of out of my seat surprise, but maybe would you be like, what about an Andrade return?
Oh, I think if contractually he's free from AEW, I'd love to see that.
I think there was some talk about an AEW talent showing up on WWE soon.
Sure.
And I can't think of anything else, but if they made well with Charlotte and everything's back to normal. Ric Flair came back out. Everybody like maybe if that camp comes out, who knows? But we will see. With that said, we're getting out of here. We're counting this thing out. 1, 2, 3. Until next time.
Watch us too.